If you're glad to be here, just clap your hands and just give God a praise. We're in the sanctuary. I know we're here, amen, to talk about the legislative session, but we're in the house of the Lord, and we give God thanks and praise on this day for the privilege of being here and the privilege of being with you. My name is David Malcolm Magruder. I have the privilege of serving as the executive pastor here at Friendship West. And on behalf of our senior pastor, Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Haynes III, and the entire family of faith here at Friendship West, we greet you this morning in the matchless name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We also come this morning at a very critical hour in the history of this state and in the history of our nation. Next year, America will celebrate 250 years of existence. And yet with each passing day, it becomes painfully clear that our nation's character remains underdeveloped, that our fellow countrymen are often very naive, and that our democracy is increasingly fragile. Without great intentionality, without great care, without the kinds of things that you are doing this morning, those enduring American ideals, right, that we continue to strive and fight to make America live up to, freedom, liberty, justice for all, they will give way to outright fascism, authoritarianism, and technocracy. And so what began as an experiment in self-governance now teeters on the edge of becoming a cautionary tale. But we who believe in freedom have come in the spirit of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who declared in the Gospel of Luke, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me." And I thought y'all was faith-filled people and that y'all would shout about the fact that that means that he has anointed me to what? Preach good news to the poor. He sent me to reclaim and proclaim release to the captives, that he has taught me, given me permission to claim recovery of sight to the blind, and to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim that this is the year of the Lord's favor. And this was not simply a rehearsal of prophetic rhetoric. It was prophetic summoning of the Spirit of God's people to be like Christ, to live into the liberation that he has called us to. It is a reminder that our responsibility is to heal the broken, to proclaim that justice is not a dream deferred, but it is indeed a divine demand. And so today, as we come to reflect on the 89th legislative session, we do so with great clarity. Clarity that our faith is not neutral in the face of injustice. We understand the critical nature of collaborative work in this social political moment. And so we are proud to partner with the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Omicron Mu Omega chapter for this state of the state. We had shared legislative priorities this session and have a shared sense of pursuing justice. And so we commend the women of AKA for making social justice one of their national organizational targets and for living that mission with boldness and with grace. And so we gather this morning for more than simply a recap. We gather for a recommitment to truth-telling, to defending democracy, to building a Texas and an America where justice truly rolls down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Again, on behalf of our senior pastor, Dr. Haynes, and the entire Friendship West family, we greet you in the name of Jesus, and we say to you, welcome. Let us pray. Gracious and just God, we come before you this day with open hearts and with sharpened minds that we have determined to leverage as weapons against those who would impose injustice. We are aware that we're living in a defining moment in the history of this state and in the history of this nation. Oh God, you who anointed Jesus to preach good news to the poor, to proclaim release to the captives, and to set at liberty those who are oppressed, send that same Spirit upon us. Give us courage to speak the truth clarity to discern the times, and boldness to act in love. Bless now this gathering. May it not merely be a reflection. May it inspire a recommitment. May we not only critique what is broken, but co-labor in building what is just. We thank you for the women of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and for their commitment to social justice and civic witness. Bind us together in shared purpose and prophetic imagination to protect the vulnerable, to guide our legislators, to strengthen our communities, to let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. We pray this in the name of Jesus, through the Holy Spirit, according to your word, and amen.
I'm Tanya Savage, president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Omicron Mu Omega chapter here in Dallas. It is my privilege and honor to represent my sorority here today in our chapter, and yet another opportunity to partner with Friendship West Baptist Church and its social action ministry to do things, to discuss things, and to get in the groove of continuing the support for our communities. As you all know, our respective entities have a long-standing history of social justice and being a voice for the voiceless. As Reverend Danielle Ayers and I discussed last year what the Social Action Committee agenda would look like for 2025, I told her the resounding question for me, whether Kamala Harris assumed the White House or not, is now what? I think today is a bold response to that question. We know we must collaborate. We know we must educate ourselves, and we know we must remain active so that we keep a voice in this country. I can't help but be reminded of an interview with Stacey Abrams from Georgia. And the interviewer asked her after political loss, how does she forge ahead? How does she keep her head up? And how does she continue to fight? And she looked at him squarely in the eye and boldly said that her grandfather said to her, "We have yet to earn the right to be tired." And so I thank you this morning for not succumbing to fatigue, succumbing to defeat, or weariness. We have to maintain our voice. So sessions across the country have ended, but our activism, our education, our engagement must continue. And for that, I say welcome to the state of the state.
Good morning, good morning. So I am Reverend Dr. Danielle Ayers, and I serve as the pastor of Justice at Friendship West Baptist Church, but I also have the privilege of serving as the committee chairman of the local chapter of Omicron Mu Omega chapter, the AKA Connection and Social Action Committee. So I'm super excited that we're able to partner, because as our Madam President just mentioned, we have both institutions have a long-standing history of engaging our faith in public life, because both institutions were certainly founded on faith, that we believe there's something much bigger than us that can handle what we can't handle, but we do what we are called to do. And so on today, I just want to kind of set the stage and the parameters of why we are here, so that as we engage in dialogue and conversation, we can all be on the same page. So today is necessarily not about what strategy we come up with, how we move forward. It's first about knowledge transfer, that we can be fully educated on what bills were passed and what is that significant impact on our communities. Because in order to organize and mobilize, we have to understand the facts. So there's a lot of disinformation, misinformation is out there. So today is about equipping us with the knowledge that we need in order to do that. And so on the screen, if you didn't get an opportunity to sign in, it's very important that you sign in, because this is not the first of how we will engage with you beyond this moment. Many people who know me, I don't do one-offs. Everything is about a next step. And so today's step is knowledge transfer. So make sure you sign in, because if you sign in, you will be alerted when we do our follow-up from this state of the state. Next thing I want to just highlight will be the ways in which we came together is because a lot of our legislative priorities were in alignment. And what I mean by that is Friendship West and AKA. So it just makes sense for us then to build our capacity and to use our resources as a collective. So those are some of our shared legislative priorities. It's not an exhaustive list. And so what we want to do today is target those bills that we track throughout the session, but also other bills that may not have made it out of session that are important to us. And we'll have a conversation around those so we can be better prepared as we look to 27, because we'll have to be very engaged in 26. So sit back, and we look forward to an amazing time together. So I encourage you to take notes. So at the appropriate time, you'll be prepared to come to the mic and ask questions and engage with us. So now I'm going to bring up our moderator for today. He is a longtime friend of mine. He's a former city councilman for District 8. And he ran an amazing campaign. Unfortunately, for me, did not make it back into City Hall, but I know his work will continue. We look forward to partnering with him as well as really other organizations in the city, in the state as well. So Honorable Eric Wilson, please welcome our moderator for the day, former Councilman Eric Wilson.
All right. So at this time, again, good morning, everyone. Good morning. All right, we got a lively crowd this morning. Glad to see you. Glad that you're here. All right, so at this time, I would like for our panelists to please come to the stage. All right. Take the last two. All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for today's State of the State Legislative Panel hosted by the distinguished members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Omicron Mu Omega Chapter, and Friendship West Justice Ministry. Give them a round of applause. We're honored to have our elected officials with us today who serve our communities with vision, accountability, and care. They've just wrapped up the 89th Texas legislative session. This intense, consequential period brought forth significant policy decisions affecting everything from education and healthcare and civil rights and criminal justice. Our goal this morning is to engage in a candid, respectful, and informative dialogue about the decisions made under the Pink Dome and what those decisions mean for us, our families, and our future generations. So we'll begin by allowing each of our panelists to briefly introduce themselves and share one or two legislative priorities or bills they personally championed during the session or amended. So.
Good afternoon. Well, morning. My name is Representative Aisha Davis. I live in DeSoto. I was a teacher. I taught for a little over 12 years. I started teaching in Baton Rouge after Hurricane Katrina and just wanted the best for students, for our students. I taught schools with a lot of kids that look like us, and I wanted them to have the best opportunity to improve their outcomes. So as a teacher, I ran for the Texas State Board of Education, served there for 6 years, and I just completed my first session at the Texas legislature. I had a dynamic time there, sent 14 bills through the House, 11 bills to the governor's desk, 3 signed already into law. And I'm very proud and honored to be named as Freshman of the Year for the Texas Legislative Black Caucus. Thank you again for having me.
Good morning. My name is State Representative Vinton Jones, and I am proud to just wrapped up my second legislative term at the Texas House of Representatives. I'm a native of Dallas, Oak Cliff by the zoo, and I also am so happy to be here on the stage with my fraternity brother here from the Alpha Sigma Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and I'm very excited to have this conversation. There's a lot of things that we've worked on and was able to get past this legislative session, particularly regarding healthcare, some public education wins, and some other items. But for those who are following along, then you saw the challenges that existed just to really hold the gate this legislative session and make sure, even from the choice of our Speaker of the House, decisions that we made were so important. And so I was very proud to be able to serve on the Appropriations Committee where I served on Article 2 with State Representative Tony Rose, but also serving as Vice Chair of the Corrections Committee where we had to work to protect the lives of our most vulnerable, and that's our incarcerated populations, and making sure that we had the resources going to those facilities. We had the legislation moving to make sure that we served families as well who are dealing with those family members who are facing incarceration. So very excited about this conversation and the work that needs to continue as we move into our very important midterm elections.
All right, all right.
Can I share one thing I forgot to say?
Sure.
And this is so important. This should have been the first thing I said. One of the most important bills that I passed is to name 67 from South Dallas all the way into Ellis County after Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson.
All right.
Yes. So that bill is sitting on the governor's desk waiting to be signed, and as soon as it does, that will be a celebration. Every time you go down 67, you will be able to remember her legacy.
That's right.
All right, amen, amen. Very good. Well, with that being said, I do believe that there were over 3,000 bills that were proposed, and just a little over 1,200 of them actually made it through. And so I want to make sure I give you this opportunity, because it was once said to me that it's a poor frog that won't praise its own pond. So I want to give you this opportunity to talk about the highlights that you were able to accomplish and things that during this session and things you would like to, we'll follow up later on about things that you would like to accomplish going forward. So take this time to beat your chest, stick out your chest, and be proud about what you accomplished because we know that it was a fight there. So I want to give you this opportunity to talk about what you were able to accomplish, either authored or amended legislation.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that I'm very proud, particularly for my office, is raising $3 million for the Fair Park Community Park. And this is a very important park that there's a lot of fundraising that's been happening to get this park off the ground. When we look at the history of where this park is being placed, it is being placed where many black families were relocated when Fair Park was being built. Mm-hmm. And this park was a promise to those communities in South Dallas to make good and make spaces where people can live, work, and play. And so this was something that I worked very closely with Fair Park as well as our city leadership to move forward. And so I'm very proud that this is going to be something that we're going to be delivering and working to get this park to be built finally once and for all. So I'm very, very proud of that. Okay. What you got?
So I served on two committees, Higher Education and Human Services. And so I tried to focus on bills that were in those committees, so I would be right there with a voice to be able to make sure they push through. We did a couple of bills with Senator West to make sure that students are empowered with knowledge, so they're not paying a whole bunch of money to pay courses that they will never, ever use. So we put a lot of financial transparency bills into place, and it's really going to help prepare our students even better as they transition to our universities and they prepare to graduate and don't have a lot of student debt once they do so. I also talked to a lot of grandparents. There was a group that I talked to several times. They're called Grandparents Raising Grandchildren. And they talked about the different needs. Most of these grandparents, they had no clue that they will be taking care of little bitty babies at this stage in life. And a lot of them retired. They didn't have extra income. They only got a little bit of money through the foster care system. So we worked to figure out how can we get more resources to these grandparents, because we had quite a few here in House District 109. So we had a couple of bills to protect them as well. One of the bills I actually had a lot of problems with. I never thought I would have problems with. It was a bill to make sure we had enough mental health professionals around all of our counties in Texas. And we already have a loan repayment program for student loans to help more people get excited about being in the mental health professions. Well, in my bill, we expanded that for school counselors, because we definitely need way more school counselors around the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. So I was excited. I was up there presenting my bill, and next thing I know, someone goes to the back mic and they're like going in on how horrible of a bill this is. And it took my colleagues really supporting me in that moment because they turned it into something it absolutely was not. They accused school counselors of some ridiculous things, and they said we should never give them any type of support. We definitely shouldn't use our taxpayer dollars to support school counselors. So I didn't even realize that was a thing. I've been in public education all this time, and I see school counselors doing so much work. I never saw them doing any of the things they were being accused of. So the bill did pass after a hard struggle, and it's sitting on the governor's desk right now. But that was one of the ones I was most proud to fight for.
Okay. All right. Let me just not assume that everybody understands where these particular districts are located and who they represent. So I would like for them to have opportunity to describe the boundaries of your district.
So House District 100 pretty much surrounds the southern crest of downtown Dallas. And so I have parts of West Dallas, over by Westmoreland, Hampton. I go following Highway 35 as north as the Medical District with UT Southwestern, dropping down 35 to about Victory Park, into Oak Cliff, not necessarily on the Bishop Art side, but on the Illinois Marsalis by the zoo side. Also moving into South Dallas, where I have the entire South Dallas. Actually going back over to the Oak Cliff side, my district dips on the 67 side to about Keys Park. So coming back to South Dallas, got all of South Dallas, and I move up into East Dallas. And so, of course, these areas are very gerrymandered. But that's about the district. It's about 186,000 people, 86% people of color. So the district and the issues that we face are very important to people of color because this is where we really are in the city of Dallas.
So I represent the area we call the Best Southwest. Cedar Hill, we used to have Duncanville, but now just like 1% of Duncanville, about half of DeSoto, Lancaster, but we do also have Grand Prairie. We have some rural areas, Combine, Texas, if any of y'all have ever heard of that. I think it's like maybe 5 of us there. And we loop around a little bit into a couple more rural areas that are in Dallas County, but we're pretty much the southwest border between Dallas County and Ellis County.
All right. All right, and I want to touch on something, Representative Davis, that you talked about, the bill that you, the counseling bill, and how you had to fight through it. And this is an opportunity for our audience to kind of look behind the veil, if you will, and how sausage is made and how you had to fight so that the population really understands what it actually takes to bring something from a thought to the floor and get it passed. So would you kind of walk us through that process?
Sure. So again, this was working very closely with Senator West's office. He actually authored the bill, and we supported the bill once it got through the House side, because a bill has to go through the Senate, it has to go through the House, and then it gets to the governor's desk. So that bill was so important to us, we wanted to take ownership of it in the House and make sure it got to the governor's desk. So when we did our very first reading, again, I was up there very excited about it. And there was a group of folks that kind of are disruptive sometimes. And again, they got back there and started accusing counselors of just some ridiculous things. Oh my gosh, if you go back and watch the video, if y'all have heard of Representative Symphonia Thompson, our dean, member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, and an amazing woman, you see her yelling at them from her seat, and then you see her getting up, coming to the mic, yelling at the guy because he was clearly lying. And it became a point where members of the Black Caucus came up in a circle around this guy as he's telling all these vicious lies about educators. And now he has some more folks. And it just got to the point I was like, you know what, this is very disruptive. Let's go ahead and stop this conversation now and revisit it once it's cooled down a little bit. And we did. We waited about 2 days and we brought the conversation back up. Same thing happened again. And actually the first time the vote went through, the bill, it failed. But it only failed by 4 votes. And when a vote is that close, you can call for something called verification. Everybody has to be in their seat, and they call each person one by one to make sure you voted the way that was on the screen. When they had the verification vote, it was some people that actually weren't there. Somebody else voted for them. So that vote didn't count. And then there were some folks who realized how good this bill actually was. So they changed their vote. And in the end, I ended up winning by 8 votes. You have to do 2 readings on the House floor. So the second time, I was like, okay, I'm gonna work this bill, I'm gonna make sure I talk to everybody, I tell them how important it is. I had nonprofits and groups and counselors talking to all of the House members. So I believe it was 2 days before all bills had to be heard. I brought it back up. Senator West came, and we had so many people that were really rooting for the bill. This was really important. We need school counselors so bad. So actually what I did was, when I got up there, I read a quote from a Republican, Sid Miller. He's a statewide elected official. And he had done a blog the week before about the importance of mental health care, because there was actually an increase in suicides amongst farmers and farming communities. So this has importance in so many different ways. And so I read his quote. That's all I did. I read his quote. And I asked him to remember how important this is to Texans that don't have access to mental health care. And that bill actually ended up passing by just a handful of votes. I couldn't even believe it. But it was more people who understood the importance than the people that were trying to railroad it, because they wanted to carry on a narrative about school counselors. And that's how I know that's a place where you can get things done if you work across the aisle, if you talk about the importance of bills, if you're open to those discussions. There are some people who are there just to cause chaos, but the majority of us are there to work. And so it was very exciting for me to really clearly understand that. I can't wait till next session. We can talk about even more bills. But this was the opportunity for me to really fight for a bill and understand what it takes to get something over the finish line.
And I just want to say that, one, when we look at someone who works as hard as Representative Davis, she earned that Freshman of the Year. And she really came in day one making sure that the issues of her district was raised. And so her work and her result is a testament of that hard work. So if we could give her a round of applause one more time.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so, keeping in the vein of education, there was a couple of bills that I had during this legislative session. One was HB 1368, which was regarding parental notification. And so this was a bill that passed the House of Representatives but did not get past the Senate. But as passed, the bill would require that if there was an absence of greater than 30 days of a librarian, a nurse, or a counselor, that parents would be notified. Whether that could be something like on a school district's website or a phone call or whatever, but parents need to be notified if those key support staff members were not present. And so this was a priority that I worked very closely with so many teachers, so many teacher union organizations, and really working to make sure that when we so much during this conversation during our legislative session focused on parental notification and parental rights. We wanted to make sure that was a full conversation, and part of that rights is to make sure that not only do we support our teachers, but also we support our support staff, and we let our parents know when those staff are not available at our schools. In addition to that, we had a bill that would require another area of support staff to be supported, which was our custodians. And so in House Bill 1573, we were able to get past the Public Education Committee, but unfortunately not able to get off of the House floor. This was a bill that will require school districts to create square footage standards for custodial workloads. So to make sure we're not overworking our custodial staff. And in so many districts, custodians are experiencing burnout, and we have to make sure to support all of our school staff in addition to providing necessary resources to our teachers. Another area that was very important was property tax. And I know we're going to talk about the property tax bill that passed that I was happy to be a co-author on. But one bill that I also had that was able to go to the Ways and Means Committee was House Bill 1367, which would provide a flat dollar county homestead exemption. And this bill is important because it would, if passed, match the $140,000 homestead exemption that the state is currently offering, and allowing commissioners' courts to be able to authorize that amount of homestead exemption. So providing more homestead exemption relief to residents. And so I'm very proud of this legislation because even though it did not get to the House floor, it made it to committee for the first time. And this has been a bill that many have been pushing, including our county leaders. I worked very closely with Dallas County to be able to get this heard by the Ways and Means Committee for the first time. And so very proud of that legislation. Another honorable mention I'll mention is House Bill 1369. Which was tenant eviction records protection. And I know we heard a lot about House Bill 38, which was kind of cloaked as a squatter's bill, but it was really a bill that came for the rights of those who are renting during the evictions process. And so a bill I had put forward that unfortunately did not move forward was a bill that if a person was in an eviction proceeding, and that proceeding was dismissed. No money was paid. There was no issues to be able to make the issue get dismissed. If it was just dismissed, in 5 years, someone could have that record sealed. And that is so important because we don't even have things that are on people's credit more than 7 years. And so when we look at evictions, we have to make sure that we don't have things lingering on our backgrounds that will prevent us from getting into stable housing or the next level of housing if we want to talk about social climb. And so that was a very important piece of legislation that I'm looking to continue to move because we have to make sure that homes in our neighborhoods continue to stay affordable, but because we're continuing as a community to be priced out of our communities day by day.
Can I share something?
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
One thing Benton did not say, Representative Jones, was that he was chair of our Dallas delegation. And we had a lot of tough issues that were coming before Dallas. Like DART was almost defunded. And if it wasn't for the leadership of Representative Jones, that likely would have happened. He gathered us, he talked to us, we had lunches consistently, he made sure we had the facts and the data. So I can't imagine that job on top of everything else we had to do, and he did an amazing job as our chairman.
Thank you.
Very good.
And while we're talking about DART, I think that's a very important conversation that we all need to really pay attention to. And so our DART work, as it relates kind of in short, trying to be short.
Hey, take your time.
Some of these surrounding cities, particularly the city of Plano, are wanting to pull from the agreements that have been made with DART and voters regarding a tax, a penny tax on residents that have been agreed on, that's been voted on. And so this is bad because this involves billions of dollars. And when we look at the ridership and how that impacts riders already, now with the bill not moving forward, we're looking at conversations about reduced bus services, particularly in the southern sector of Dallas. When we look at where people are going or coming from to get to Plano to work those jobs in those malls, in those restaurants, in those places that are doing business, they're coming from the southern sector. And so we really have to make sure that we are protecting our public transit system right now and continuing to make sure that is a resource that continues to move forward. And so that was a very important fight, and I'm so proud of our Dallas delegation for really making sure that that bill did not move forward. You got some notes, so I'm pausing.
Okay. You're fine. You're fine. All right. I'm so glad that you all were able to expand on that, and I hope the audience got the sense of how much work is actually they're put in just to be able to get a bill passed or read, that they're just not going down and say, hey, I want to do this, and it goes through. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that has to be done, and there are a lot of opportunities for your constituents to help you with that. So hopefully we'll be able to expand more on that. And as we get to the question portion, that's where your questions come in and how you can help your elected official to be able to work the needs of your area or our city, and understanding that they have a battle because if I'm correct, the Democrats are in the minority in both chambers, and so being able to pass legislation may be a challenge, but through working across the aisles, we'll be able to get things done. So with that, is there any other bill or legislation or anything that you would like to toot your horn? This is your time period to do so.
Well, I will say, are we going to talk about bail reform a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well,
I'll tell you what.
Wait to talk about that.
Well, let's go right into it then.
I would say a bill that I wanted to raise was House Bill 50, which was a bill regarding HIV testing. And that was a bill that, if passed, would require our doctors, if someone was going in to get tested for STIs, sexually transmitted diseases, that HIV would be a part of that. Currently, that is not the case. You have to opt in to get an HIV test, even if you are going to get tested for STDs. So when we look at HIV and its prevalence in Black and brown communities, we have to make sure that access to care, no matter what we are accessing, whether we talk about HIV testing, testing to be able to address sickle cell disease, or some of the other issues that we tackled this legislative session, we have to make sure that healthcare continues to stay accessible for communities of color. And one of the important conversations we really have to have is the impact that the federal government is having on healthcare access, and how the state really has to double down to make sure that we are providing funds to continue to provide the needed safety nets when so many organizations are literally closing their doors because of very rapid and violent funding cuts that are happening at the federal level. And so this HIV testing bill was a wonderful step forward. Even though this bill didn't pass, we were able to get, for the first time, long-acting injectables added to the ADAP formulary, which is the AIDS Drug Assistance Program, so that people living with HIV can be able to have access to long-term injectables. And why is this important? Because another thing that is so important for communities of color is making sure we do not have so many disruptions of care that exist. So if we can make sure that a person doesn't have to take a pill every day, that goes to every month, or could move to every 3 months, that really helps with adherence and ultimately treating the high levels of HIV that we're seeing in the Black community. And so I was very proud to be a part of that legislation that moved forward through our SB1, our appropriations bill, and our funding for the state.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
When I look at my district, again, I used to teach at DeSoto High School. We have a lot of young men and young women who are very athletically gifted, and they go to college, and the colleges use their image, and they don't get anything from it. And their family is paying a lot of money for them. Even though they get full scholarships, they still a lot of money associated with going there. I had a nephew that went to Oregon to play football, and it was very expensive for our family. So I was very proud to joint author a bill that allows NIL payments for students from colleges. And these are very carefully put together contracts between the universities and the students and the families, making sure if that university is going to use that image of that student or their name or their likeliness in any way, that that student and their family is compensated for that.
I just want to back up just a little bit, and you all mentioned it in terms of chairing different committees, and I don't want that to go by, the importance of that. So could you talk about that importance of chairing a committee or serving on a committee, and what that means in terms of being able to pass legislation, and what that means for your district?
Absolutely. So I wore a number of hats. I wear a number of hats. We're still in the legislative session overall, but my role, I am the Democratic Caucus Whip. So that job includes, when we were on the House floor every day, working to make sure that Democrats were knowledgeable about the issues and the votes that were taking place, especially towards the end when we had so many long days. I'm sure this is a shock to our freshman member here, but that last 2 weeks, we were literally on the floor of the House from 10 a.m. To most nights over midnight, and not just Monday through Thursday, but Monday through Sunday, including almost having to go on Mother's Day. And it was very important that we showed up because every time we kind of disappear, that's when things start to happen. And so when you mentioned particularly what was the vote that was required, out of a chamber of 150 people, we had 88 Republicans and 62 Democrats. And in order to pass legislation, you need 76 to be able to pass a bill with a majority of everyone present. And if you needed a supermajority, you would need 100 votes. And so some of the regular bills, the House bills, Senate bills, so things you see HB or SB, were the ones that really required that 76 vote threshold. If something was a resolution, HJR or SJR, those required 100 votes. And so those votes were very important because even though Republicans has the majority, they do not have the supermajority of the House. So we really had to make sure that we used our leverage for those resolutions that needed those 100 votes because, as I mentioned, Republicans only had 88. So they needed at least 12 Democrats to be able to engage. And so part of being the whip was working to keep those numbers together and working with our House leadership to move forward. Also including my leadership positions, I was vice chair of the Corrections Committee, and so serving with the chair who, for this time in the House, for the first time, Republicans voted to remove Democratic chairs. So all Democrats had to be in leadership through vice chairmanship, and so I was very honored to be able to serve during my second term as a vice chair of one of the House committees, also serving as vice chair of the Texas House LGBTQ caucus, also parliamentarian of the Texas Black Legislative Caucus, and the chairman of the Dallas Democratic delegation. And so this was very important to me because organizing and mobilizing our members was something that was very, very important to me. And so also when you look at that, you have to look at how does that leverage with your bills. And so a lot of the work that was done for me was really done through the appropriations process so that my work on the floor could really be focused on those leadership positions and mobilizing our members to make sure that we protected good legislation and we fought against the bad legislation that came in every aspect through the budget, through the actual legislation, and through other ways too as well.
I think for me, I definitely spent a lot of time learning, and I was grateful for the leadership of Representative Jones and those who were able to show me all the different things you have to do to be successful in passing a bill. And again, the two committees I served on, higher education and human services. Human services was so important to me because we have a huge senior population in my district, especially in DeSoto. And just wanted to make sure we protect our seniors, and we figured out whatever we had to do to make sure they were comfortable and okay. In higher education, there were only 2 Black representatives on higher education, myself and Representative Charlene Ward Johnson from Houston. And so it was up to us to make sure that that conversation was always steered in the right way, because it was always something to try to talk about all this DEI in higher ed and how you need to take away resources and programs, and a lot of those affect students that look like us. So we were always on top of things that were coming in. And one thing that really taught me about this process, how everything is kind of interwoven, we would have committee at 8 a.m. on Tuesdays. Then we would go to the floor from 10 to maybe 10 at night. Then we would come back to committee till about 2, 3 in the morning. And we did that one day in particular to talk about a bill that took away in-state tuition for our DACA students. And we were there, to the wee hours of the morning. We fought that bill so hard. And we talked to our chairman, and we actually had support from both sides of the aisle to kill that bill. And so together we said, no, let's not do this to our students here in Texas. So last Monday came, that was the deadline, it didn't pass. So, it was a very clear statement that Texas wanted to protect our DACA students. We wanted them to be able to have a college degree so they can contribute to our economy. Well, 3 days later, President Trump didn't like that. And so he connected with Governor Abbott, with Ken Paxton, with a judge, and they took it away anyway. So even though we spent all that time working to protect those DACA students, to make sure they had access to that in-state tuition, they still figured out a way to take it away. So we have got to stay on top of what's happening at the federal level, as well as what's happening at the state level. There's some crazy things going on that I didn't even know you could do. But they're making up rules as they go. And so we have to make sure the bills that pass are going to be implemented with fidelity, that they're not going to throw an extra wrench in there and now it's something it was never intended to be. And at the federal level, they don't stop that progress, because that's a real goal right now. They're doing a lot of things to try to stop even the perception of progress. So even though session is done, we still have a whole lot of work to make sure that these laws don't end up being something even more negative for our communities.
All right, thank you. As you can see, with the passion and the knowledge and what it takes to be able to get things through to the finish line, it takes a lot, and we commend you for your service. And as we talk about taking away things, we'll get into the bills, some bills that did make it through. SB 2, as it relates to bills that are aimed to limit who is eligible for personal bonds, particularly those who are accused of violent offenses. Supporters say it makes communities safer, while critics argue it disproportionately harms low-income individuals. Where do you stand, and what's your view on the final version that passed?
Is it SB 2?
SB 2,
So SB 2, this was our voucher bill, and this was a horrific bill, and I say that because from the very simple fact that when we're looking at what we need to be doing for our public schools at the very basic level is making sure that we're putting money into our public schools. And so as we were starting to have this conversation about vouchers this session, this price tag started at $1 billion. As we start looking at the impact that it would have on over time, that number is growing and growing. And so there is a concern about the voucher program and what we've seen in other states that have enacted voucher programs and what they do to our schools and our state budgets, as a matter of fact. And so this was a great concern because, again, for another legislative session, Republican leadership held up school finance as the carrot to pass vouchers. No one, and I mean no one, in this state as far as residents asked for vouchers. Teachers did not ask for vouchers, students did not ask for vouchers, visitors to the Capitol did not ask for vouchers. Every time that someone came into my office or to the committee, the different public education committees, they were speaking against vouchers. What we know and have seen is the influence of money, particularly billionaires influencing this conversation, not only in the state of Texas, but throughout our country, to inflict these voucher programs so that vendors can be able to have access to public education funds and really not do the work that's needed to ultimately allow children who are from lower socioeconomic areas to access private schools. When we look at the price tag for private schools, what is $11,000 going to do to not only provide someone admission to a private school, but transportation to that private school, support for extracurricular activities at that private school, and everything else that is going to be needed to fit into the culture of that private school. And so $11,000 is really a drop in the bucket, but $11,000 at our public schools, that could change things. That when we, I know we're having a conversation about, public schools, and I'll let it wait there, but SB 2 was a huge fight that unfortunately vouchers did go through, but one of the most important things that we need to do right now is stay on top of the Texas Education Agency, who will be implementing the voucher programs to make sure that our schools and our areas that need the most investment, that we're not taking even more money out of those schools when we need to be investing in the infrastructure of those institutions.
Look, y'all already know I wasn't for the voucher scam. I did not like that at all. I mean, it has been bad since I first heard about it. First of all, they done starved the schools since 2019, haven't given any significant funding, and then you're going to say the schools are underperforming. If you're not giving them money, what you expect them to do? They're doing the best with what they have. Then you say, oh, okay, well, parents need a choice because our public schools aren't doing what they're supposed to do. But those private schools aren't going to accept the students that have any kind of discipline record, our students with any kind of special learning needs. They're not going to accept those students. So the choice is not for the parents. The choice is still with the schools, because they can say no for whatever reason they want to, and they can put you out for whatever reason they want to. And one of the biggest fears that we have now is, okay, a school district, you only have until what, like around October, November to get funding for a student. So if these private schools start putting kids out around November and December, they start coming to the ISDs. Those ISDs don't get any funding for those kids. So now you got to educate all these kids. You're getting less amount of money to do it. We passed a school funding bill, but it wasn't even half of the money that the districts really needed to be caught up with that 2019 level and be successful for the future. So it was definitely a scam. In every state that we see, you see students who are already in private schools that are ones that are benefiting. But the reason why I'm so offended by the voucher program is it was started after Brown versus Board of Education, when white parents didn't want their kids going to these integrated schools, so they came up with this program to make sure their kids could be in their schools. And that has continued on with the narrative, because again, as Representative Jones said, it wasn't the majority of parents, it wasn't educators, it wasn't even private schools that were asking for these vouchers. It was more of a political thing that was going on, and Texas just wanted to say, we did it too. So now we have to really keep eyes on it. In every other state, it has blown up the budget. We already got $1 billion allocated toward it. We probably will go over that amount. You know, so we really have to keep eyes on this program to see who's really benefiting from this. And if we need to, well, when we do, we need to scale this back to make sure our money is going to our public schools where it belongs. I'm sorry, y'all.
Right. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So let's talk about something that's personal to a lot of individuals in here, and that is Black maternal health mortality crisis. And understanding that, we understand that Black women are 3 to 4 times most likely to die from giving birth. And then what passed was Senate Bill 31, which talks about the abortion prosecution. It strengthens the ability to prosecute people who will help others obtain abortions outside the legal framework in Texas. Given the state's near total abortion ban, how do you respond to constituents, especially women, concerned about criminalization and surveillance of personal decisions?
Yeah. I'll start because I'll be the most brief with this. I think that this bill, particularly SB 31, was a hard pill but a necessary pill for the current state of our state right now. This bill in place would at least allow a loophole for procedures that would save the life of a mother. And right now, doctors are petrified to provide abortion or abortion-like services, even if it puts the life of the mother at risk. And so this was a bill that was debated heavily on the floor. And what was important as far as why this bill received my vote was that we shouldn't have to have mothers having to drive and fly across the state to get health procedures when their life is already in danger at that moment. And so we have to be clear about these bills, and we also have to understand the unintended or even intended consequences of these far-right bills that are harming almost every way that we live, public health, when we look at so many decisions that should be at the decision of a doctor and a patient, we as lawmakers should not be involved in those conversations, and this is the consequence when we do that. And so this was a fix to be able to do that, but there is so much more needed. And when we look at the configuration of getting those votes needed, we need to change these laws to make sure that we have access to our health care. But this was a law that would at least allow doctors to provide life-saving health care to women who would have to terminate their pregnancy in order to save their lives.
Yeah, the bill was literally called the Life of the Mother bill. And we were so narrow in the conversation, we only talked about instances where the mother would die without this life-saving care, and it was so disturbing to me that people still voted against it. So, I'm really happy that now we have something that gives doctors some kind of leeway to know that they can perform this, but again, we do need to make sure that we're revisiting this every session to make sure we give women health care rights back. Yes. Representative Charlene Ward Johnson, again, that was one of my favorite freshmen. She actually authored a bill that would do a study for Black maternal health care and looking at our maternal mortality when it comes to us having babies. That bill did make it through the House, but it did not make it through the Senate, so she will be trying that again. So that will definitely be a bill that we'll be looking for to support next session.
Okay. Just as a quick follow-up, what protections, if any, do you believe should be in place for medical providers and families negotiating complex pregnancies?
I believe that abortion is health care. I don't believe that we should have all these restrictions, regardless of what you need the abortion for, what you want the abortion for. It's nobody's business. So until we get to that point of staying out of women's privacy, then, I'm going to keep fighting for that. But I don't think we should be talking about any type of restrictions for a woman needing health care.
That's right. I second that.
Very good, very good. All right, let's doubling back around to Senate Bill 9, bill reform. That's why I do municipal. That's why I do city. I don't do state. A lot of names. So Senate Bill 9 is the bail reform, and I'll just go back through and reiterate that. Senate Bill 9 related to bills that aim to limit who is eligible for personal bonds, particularly those accused of violent offenses. Supporters say it makes communities safer, while critics argue and disproportionately harm low-income individuals. Where do you stand, and what's your view on the final version that passed?
Well, if you look at the conversation by itself regarding kind of the bail reform or some of the criminal justice bills, we were making sure to get these bad people off the street. When you look at the trend of the 89th session, though, you saw bills that were working to harm undocumented communities a lot more, that were going to harm communities of color a lot more, that were going to take the rights from a lot of those communities. And so when you look at this bill, SB 9, and the series of bail bills that were put in place, they really created just an increased system that's already harder to navigate for communities of color. Now, we definitely want to make sure that we get our most violent offenders off the street. Let me be super clear with that. But we also have to make sure we trust the judges that we put in place to navigate that legal process. Just like in our previous conversation, we have to trust the medical professionals that we put in place to navigate that healthcare process. As lawmakers, however, we do not need to be in the weeds of those conversations as far as taking the rights from judges that we vote to put in place to be able to deliver justice in our local communities. And so this was the biggest issue that a lot of Democrats in particular saw and took issue with. Also, the increased criminalization that happens as a result of these crimes and not being able to even be afforded the opportunity to request bail, you would just be locked up and throw away the key. I think that as we look at justice, you always have to have the opportunity to be heard and to let the legal process play its role. And so, again, this was not legislation that prosecutors wanted or anyone involved in the justice system. And we heard from so many of our leaders regarding this, legislation and not wanting this legislation and wanting just to do a little bit more to change how this, was put forward. And so we put together a lot of amendments that these bills went through, and some were accepted, some were not, and even the ones that were accepted were then changed and removed at the Senate level. And so on the last and final days of the legislative session, we were navigating harmful amendments that were put back into legislation that we worked to put, to take out in the first place. And so that was a hard bill, but it did get through, and there are some guardrails in place, but I think that we still have to pay attention and make sure that as these systems navigate through our system, that they continue to serve our communities equitably and justly.
Yeah, they kept referring to them as bail reform, but really it was just taking bail away, like your constitutional right to bail, taking it away. And they would say, oh, okay, well, this is just for undocumented people or whatever. It won't affect Black communities. But what would stop you next session from just striking the word undocumented citizen? And now it's open for everybody, and now our communities are affected. I don't trust them. So I was like, no for any of those. I'm for real. But one thing I learned is that Democrats do have power down there, because some of this stuff requires constitutional amendments. And in order for the Constitution to be changed, the people of Texas have to vote for it. But it takes 100 of us to vote for that. So you are going to have some Democrats if you want that to pass. So the majority of the Democrats were like, no, we're not about to take away the constitutional right to bail. So all the ones that required some sort, they required the constitutional amendments, we were able to kill those. The ones that just required the simple majority, now we struggle with those. So anytime the Constitution is changed, they want to change something in the Constitution or protection, that's when Democrats really have the power to step up and say, you know what, no, you need our votes for this, we're not going for that. And that's one thing that we did to fight some of those really bad bail reform bills.
Can I mention
Go ahead.
Give it up. Yeah. Can I mention a really good bill that did get through and is going to be impactful to many of you in the room? And this is regarding property tax relief. So what happened regarding property tax relief is that there was $51 billion of the budget put into property tax relief this legislative session. And so through SB 4, provided an additional property tax relief to homeowners that goes from $100,000 of homestead exemption through your school district taxes to $140,000 to an exemption. Also through SB 23, that's also increasing the senior exemption and also disabled homeowner exemption from $10,000 more to $60,000 more. And so that would be that additional exemption that if you are a senior. Also, in HB 9, there was an increase in the business personal property tax exemption that increased from $2,500 to $125,000 to lower taxes for small businesses. And also, there was some additional work that was done throughout some other pieces of legislation. I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned the work that was done through property tax relief, in which we started that work last legislative session, but increased that number because we knew more was needed, particularly for cost of property and the rising cost of property taxes in Dallas.
All right. All right, thank you. We have over 1,000 bills to talk about, but unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about those 1,000 bills. So we don't want this to be just a sit and get. This is where the interactive portion. So hopefully you've been listening. You have questions based upon what has been said or what you think or what you want questions answered about. This is your opportunity to come to either mic If you would, state your name and let us know what part of the city you live in, and then ask your question of our representatives. Come on down.
Somebody please ask us about the DEI bill.
I do have a
please.
question. Even though I'm someone who's working the mic, I actually do have a question. I live in the north side of town. I'm resident of Plano. This question is mostly for Representative Jones. You were on the committee that appropriations, especially for our prisoners. Is there any type of review, amendment, or something in place to review the vendors that are being contracted that processes the payment systems for on the books? Because from what I've seen, most of the vendors that we're utilizing in Texas take no less than 30% of the amount of money that constituents are trying to send their loved ones in prison. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I don't have that information, but please reach out to my office because that's definitely something we can look into. I would definitely love to answer that question for you.
Good morning, Representatives. Thank you for being here. I'm Thelma Clardy. I live in the DeSoto area, and I've had my own law practice. For the last 30 years, I exclusively practice in the family and probate areas. I've been involved with some of the issues on family and probate. But my question to you, Representative Davis, you spoke earlier about the maternal mortality rate and that you got it through the House but not through the Senate. Can you elaborate on what the issues that the Senate saw with that question? That issue?
So one of the things about the Senate is that Dan Patrick has a lot of control about what's heard on the Senate floor. And when you have a bill that focuses on black women and the health of black women and addressing the health of black women, and it has a little bitty price tag to it, then it's his discretion a lot of the times on whether or not that bill is actually heard, and that's not his priority at all. So next session, making sure to talk to leadership in the Senate and his office will be key to making sure this passes through, because it will definitely have support from the House again. The Speaker of the House was very supportive of the bill. So we just have to make sure that the Senate side understands that importance and that they carry that bill through.
Well, we look forward to helping you with that.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Benjamin Jackson. I'm in House District 103. Can you talk about the emerging risks that we see like in Tarrant County around redistricting and how that's coming to the state level and what that looks like with the governor trying to change the political landscape across Texas? And the second question is, I know you all represent the southern sector of the city and the southern county sector of the city. Talk about our other people who live outside of those predominantly African-American areas. How can they focus on House districts races every 2 years to elect more people to support their values and views to help get more things passed in the House district races?
Those are good questions. I want to start with your second question first. Now, our rural communities, that's really where we got to really focus on a lot of our voter registration, a lot of electing good people. I'm in one of the bluest districts in all of Texas. We know we're going to have a Democrat likely. No matter how you try to redistrict, that area is going to be blue. DeSoto, Cedar Hill, Duncanville, we're not playing that down there. But you do have some areas around, and they try to reshape those districts. So there are more folks from those areas that are from the Republican Party, and there are some good people on both sides of the aisle. It's not always terrible, but you got to make sure the right people from those areas are getting elected. So if you are in an area that you know is majority red, you got to make sure that in that primary, a good person is coming. So that way, in the general, whatever happens. But if you are in one of those really rural counties, sometimes it's more important to figure out who is going to end up winning that primary. Then you can kind of take care of some of those people that we have said been very disruptive. So even if sometimes you can't, we should always focus on making sure the best person is in that seat, whoever it is. So if you're in one of the southern sector seats, you're likely voting blue. If you're in another area, you have a big responsibility to make sure that that person is the best person. So you may have to do some different things to make sure of that.
I would say as an answer to what You want to go to the? Were you going to answer the first one?
Go ahead.
Well, I want to, I guess, stay with the second one too. But I think that, I've looked at this in three different ways. Like one, if you're, in those, representative seats in the southern sector, it's very important that you continue to work the district even after the primary. And you continue to show up in the district, because when you look at places like, I'll use my district for example, the voter turnout is in Dallas County is about 60%. In House District 100, that goes down to 30%. So if we just work our way to the average, what would that mean to those statewide races that we need to win when we're looking at our next governor, our next attorney general, and those very key positions? And what we know is that even before we kind of crack this, this kind of the rule issue with, getting Democrats elected again, our urban centers in Dallas, in Houston, San Antonio, Austin are, really moving our elections. And so it's going to be really important that we continue to show up in the area. And then also, there are some areas that we can look at that are next to our urban hubs that we can look at for, additional wins. We can also look at Collin County as far as places that we can kind of work into, because so many of our communities, black and brown people, or people who have just been in these urban cores, are getting priced out of, living in the middle of the city. And so they're going further and further out. And so we have to organize in those areas and start winning seats. But we're seeing that happen, day by day, and just need to continue to move that needle forward so that we can, win these necessary seats.
And I believe the first part was about redistricting, right?
Yes.
So we've heard rumors. We haven't heard anything solid that we may be called back to a special session to look at some congressional districts. So it wouldn't really be our districts that they would be thinking about moving the lines for, but definitely the congressional districts. That plays such an important part on what happens in DC, because we send so many representatives there. So we really have to keep eyes on that. Again, we haven't been informed officially of anything, but right now that's the chatter that's going on.
And what we know is that Donald Trump is particularly focusing on Texas to be able to get another Republican win to offset the very close majority that exists within the House of Representatives right now. And so even now, the seat to be able to that needs to be filled in Houston by the late Congressman Sylvester Turner has not been filled yet. And during that time, so many bad pieces of legislation has passed right now. So these numbers matter right now. And what Republicans are trying to do is pick up another 1 or 2 Republican House seats to continue to widen their gap and have Texas in the crosshairs to make those seats happen.
Okay. All right, just a fun fact, if you will, just to add to that, just so you may or may not know, that there are more registered Democrats in the state of Texas. If we do not do another voter registration drive to this day, if the individuals that are registered will come out, there would not be a red seat in the state. So if you're wondering what can be done, we already have the answer there, and that's just a fun fact I want to throw out there. Next question.
Hi, my name is Erica Newman, resident of DeSoto. My question is, in the House and the Senate, even though the Democrats do not have, they're not in majority, what is it that you guys can do or are doing to stop this okie doke that the Republican side is doing? What are some of the tools that you're using to get around that? Because they're coming together and they're coming up with all of this stuff that they're doing, and it's working. But what can you have some power, but what of your power can you do to kind of stop this and turn the tables? I know I've heard a couple of suggestions or some things like we're majority Democrat in this region, but you're in there now. What can we do now to try to, find our way to make things change for our community? And I recently made a visit to the Texas State Capitol with our youth group, and I met with Senator Royce West. And one thing he said in that visit, he said, it used to be a handshake meant something, and now that doesn't. So since that handshake doesn't matter anymore, what other tools can you use to, I guess, get around it? I mean, it's hard to understand.
Definitely. We tried to figure out ways that representatives could relate to our legislation. So we looked and we saw, like, this representative's mother was a school counselor. Let's talk to them about that and see if we can get him to support, maybe he can get some other people to support. So it was just finding ways that other representatives could relate to legislation, and then they could influence other folks. And then you have more people that are willing to have the conversation. But you have to be willing to think about what's important to people across the aisle. A lot of times it looks different, so your conversation has to be different. So what I want to say, I got to figure out the way that's friendly for them. But you have something in common with most people. And so when you think about that and just figure it out and talk about legislation in those terms, then that's how you start to get that bipartisan support. That's how I was able to get a lot of support for a lot of my bills. I found out who my allies would be, and I figured out, okay, look, can I ask you to be a joint author? And now I have a Republican name on my bill. And people say, oh, okay, well, they say it's okay, so I can probably vote for this and it'll be fine. Or you can go to different organizations, and the organization will say, hey, this will really help us. The organization will influence the Republican voters, and then they'll think it's okay. So you just got to figure out what's important and what the influences are, and then you got to figure out how you can get them to work with you to get those bills passed.
I would say something a little bit different. I think it's great, and it's very important to be able to work across the aisle, and I've done that since day one. But I'm also going to be honest with you. We are on the next day of a U.S. senator being slammed to the ground by law enforcement. And so when you look at what is happening in our government, that could happen at all levels of our government. Some of this is smoke and mirrors.
Yes.
And what we have to really get serious about is taking back these seats that we need to have the votes. Because we can interrupt process procedurally all day. We can stand there till the sun come up fighting those bills, but when it's time to push that button, they got the votes. They just come back into the room and push the button, and everybody go home. If we are serious about this, we shouldn't have gone into the 89th legislative session after a Trump win, losing 2 Democratic seats. We have to win those seats plus more back so that we can really have some real leverage, because I know that people may be thinking we don't. We do what we can, and then we don't. So there may be things that we can get through, but for the big issues, for our health care, for the big issues for our public education system, for the big issues for our elections, same-day elections, same-day registration, the real health care, Medicare expansion, those are dead on arrival if we do not get the seats that we need. So the thing that's going to give us the power, as just talking about from the state perspective, because lawmaking wise, unless the governor calls a special session, we're done until January 27. So from the meantime, we really have to work to get our power is going to come from how many seats we have going into that body, and it has to be better than 62. And we have to make sure that we try to at least get a statewide win so that we show that as Democrats who are serious about these issues in these communities, we are serious about taking the seats necessary to get the votes necessary to change that legislation.
If I could expand on that, when we were having our conversation about the vouchers, up until the day of the vote, there were folks on both sides of the aisle that were kind of like, we're not going to vote for this. I mean, all the Democrats said no, but there were actually some Republicans up until that day that said no. The morning before that vote, they were all gathered. All of this is very public. They were all gathered. Governor Abbott met with them and called President Trump. And I don't know what he said to them, but by the time they came out that room, every Republican but 2 voted for those vouchers. Right. So we really have to do something about who's in charge at the state level, who's in charge at the federal level, because it really plays a huge effect to us here in Texas. I told y'all, we fought against that DACA bill. We fought it, we killed it, and then 3 days later, they worked and they did it anyway. So we really, really have to get serious about registering people to vote and taking back these seats that are really, really bad for us. And I want to say this. It is the Texas law to have voter registration in every public high school twice a year. That is the law. We don't have enough young people voting. They can make a difference in a lot of these races. So I encourage you, please make sure that your local high schools are doing voter registration twice a year. If they're not, you work with somebody. I see one of my mentors, Dr. Levels in the back. She does voter registration everywhere you can think of. But make sure our young folk are informed, registered, and actually voting. Because it's one thing to register, it's another thing to actually get there and go vote. But we have to get these young people to the polls. We absolutely have to.
And what the president said to a lot of those Republicans was that they would have money put into their races and have them primaried. That is exactly what happened to many Republicans last session who did not vote for vouchers or who voted to impeach the Attorney General for conducting crimes. Money was poured that uprooted 30 Republican seats by other Republicans, many Trump Republicans. And so their seats were threatened. That's why they changed their votes, because the money that was going in their races was threatened. And so I think that we have to get real about how that's going on and how we really need to get serious about how do we protect our stake and our seats in this, because this conversation is really being dictated by money and power.
No, let's talk about it, because these freshmen are the reason why a lot of these horrible bills were able to pass through, because they were elected to do one thing, and they did that one thing they said they were going to do. They made sure vouchers passed. They made sure the 10 Commandments in every classroom passed. They made sure anti-DEI and K-12 passed. A lot of times they were up there, they were ones in the front just smiling when these horrible bills were being read. Mm-hmm. Those freshmen did what they came to do. So we have to hold them accountable. Again, a lot of them came from rural areas, but some came from Denton. Mm-hmm. So you really have to look at what folks are doing, and you got to get together, like I said, to get them out of there if they are not doing the best things for your communities. But it was some people that did some very harmful things for Texas, very, very harmful things for Texas. And we just have to make sure that they never do that again.
Powerful, powerful. Time for our last question.
Okay. You used the word scam earlier, which sadly is very appropriate for what I'm about to ask. When rents exceed the cost of a home mortgage, and Texas is continually pouring money into the low-income housing tax credit program, and at least the legislature took care of the traveling housing finance corporations, but there's no transparency in this program, there's no oversight, and there's also no penalty for wrongdoers. So my question to you is, when are we going to get serious about housing in general, affordable housing in particular, because rentals communities do not create communities. Rental communities don't create neighbors. They don't support crime watches. Home ownership in whatever form that takes, at whatever price point that takes, creates generational wealth first and foremost. It guarantees that after a certain period of time, that $2,500 a month you're paying that goes to a landlord now goes into your pocket because you've paid off the house. You've at least gotten rid of the, you've hit the 20% point where you're not paying the mortgage insurance anymore. And it's just nuts what we're doing. And it's math. It's not magic.
All right.
And for someone who's started their career in education, a lot of our problems could be solved if we taught kids government, taught Texans in general government, so that they understood the ramifications of the votes they're making, the people they're putting in office to represent them. Because I promise you now, in addition to housing, when it comes to food stamps, when it comes to Section 8, when it comes to a lot of this other stuff.
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I'm going to cut you off.
You get the point.
All right. As a former educator, I'm going to implore you, give us the gist of the answer, and so we can remain on time. Right. And then any additional information, surely stick around, and you can be able to speak with them.
I want to tell you, sir, thank you so much for your comment and the questions that you raised. I also want to make sure that we are aware of the current political environment right now, where each and every one of those programs are under attack by multiple levels of Republican leadership. And we have to change that dynamic first, or all of those things are going to get worse. We saw historic cuts to SNAP benefits through this quote-unquote big, beautiful budget. We see historic cuts to programs serving low-income individuals in HUD. The proposed cuts are coming towards Section 8 and a number of different items. And so I think ultimately right now we have to get ready for our elections, because that's the only thing that's really going to change this, because so many people that we could work with that were more kind of moderate on the other side either are no longer in their seats or scared of losing their seats. And so we really have to put leadership in place to change that dynamic, or these programs are continuing to be the first things that they're coming for, because they are deemed as social programs, and they are deemed as helping those who need the most help, and that's their targets. And so I think that for me to stop, we really have to get serious about the moment that we are in right now and take action, because it can get worse, and it will if we don't get involved.
Representative Davis.
And you were talking about some of those housing projects and things like that. And I will say this, there are some representatives that actually have ownership of some of those housing projects in some different places. And I ain't gonna use the term slumlord, but some people have. And these are the representatives that are creating these bills that are becoming laws. So when you have an interest that's gonna line your pocket, they could care less about the people that have that negative effect. And that's the reality of what's happening at that Texas legislature. When you start to look at the different interests of people and how they get their money and where their money has historically come from, then you'll start to understand a little bit more about how they vote.
Thank you. And with that being said, oh my goodness, our time
has fastly come to an end, and I want to thank our panelists. Give them a round of applause. I want to thank you, our audience, for your participation, and I'll turn it over to Pastor Ayers.
So Councilman Wilson stole a little bit of my thunder, because I was going to do some good home training and say thank you. I want to thank everyone who attended on today, so give yourselves a round of applause, because while a military parade is going on right now, we are doing what black folks do, and that is continue to hold this fragile experiment known as democracy in place. And so I want to thank not only Representative Aisha Davis and Representative Vinton Jones, but all those who we invited who just had competing schedules, because we know you worked long and hard into the wee hours of the morning, like you said, on Mother's Day. And so you could have not been here today, because I know you're tired. So let's just really applaud not just these reps, but all of our reps who did the hard work down in Austin. We really, really appreciate it. And of course, I have to thank my pastor, the Reverend Dr. newly PhD, Frederick Douglass Haynes III, for opening up the church to us on today so we could hold this event. And so what I really heard, I can't go in like I want to because I'm going to be on time, but what I really heard is that we have to really mobilize and organize to gain some ground, but also hold ground. Right? And that it's going to take us doing what I call slow work and fast work. And we have to really dig in to do that slow work it's going to take to be strategic about how we get these seats and also how we educate voters. And thank you for the insight on how it really works in Austin. Like here at Friendship West, we always do trainings around how democracy works, how our government works. So theory we know it, but then we know how it really works. And so thank you for sharing that insight. And so I have a couple of slides. If you can pull up the next slide, please. And I'm going to be asking Freddie to make his way down also with the camera. Can we get up the next slide? This is a post survey we would like for everyone to take. Someone take just a quick moment. If you could please scan what's on the screen. We want you to take this post survey. If your phone is not working just quite right and you need somebody to come to you, we have a few folks on our justice team that has a post QR code with them. If you need to hold your hand up, they can bring it to you. But please fill out your post survey. This helps us to better get a sense of how we did today, but also how we might want to move forward. Looks like everybody may have gotten a chance to grab that survey. If not, raise your hand. They'll bring one to you. Last slide is another one of our target areas is really about how we circulate, next slide, how we circulate the black dollar. And so if you remember Friendship West, you know that's what we do. We black 24/7, 365. But also as a sorority, we do the same thing. And today we have a carefully curated experience where we are going around and intentionally patronizing our black-owned businesses. So there is the flyer. And I'm going to look at my phone one last time because LaShante Williams is going to text me to let me know where they were. It started at 11:30. If you want to join us, we certainly encourage you to do that as well. So I think that is all I have. I'm going to ask for, now here's what I want to say. This is 12:01, so we're going to move, and I'm going to ask everyone to go this way. If you can go out this door, because we have a funeral that needs to take place at 1:30, so we certainly want to be respectful of the family so they can get in and be able to lay their loved one to rest. And so I'm going to ask for Sister Demetria Sampson and for our President, Tanya Savage, to come to the stage so we can take a photo. Yes, ma'am. So, Fred, if you can, oh, boom, there you are. So thank you all for coming. Be blessed and have an amazing rest of your weekend. Thank you for coming. Yes, Councilman Wilson has one last thing for y'all.
To all the fathers, I want to say happy Father's Day to you. You are appreciated and valued.